What's going on, creativists? My name is Renato Francia, and you're listening to the Creative Process. So, we're gonna talk about today about how the 3 steps that you need to get in order to make a website done, and there are like 3 things that that those 3 things are gonna determine whether you're gonna have to pay for a website or it's more about developing your own or using something free. So the first thing I want to talk about is how much content are you plan to put in your website. Is that something that you if you want to talk about? For example, I love sushi. So the first thing that I want to do is that if I want to make a blog out of sushi, do I really need to make all those configurations? Do I need a domain name to talk about sushi, like mysushi.com? If it's not going to be a business or if it's not something, it's just a hobby. So in that case, you want to make sure that, for example, if it's a hobby you want, then try something that has already been in place. Like things like Lifehack or maybe Medium.com are great resources of how to start, for example, writing content. And if it's, for example, video, like YouTube is always a good way to start putting content out there, or even Instagram. Just put a 25 things like 6 seconds. I'm confusing it with Vine. There's so many things out there. So try to do your research. I mean, what you want to do, what you want to talk about, who you're targeting to, who's your audience. And also, like, if you really like the subject, that's the most important part. Because if you don't like the subject, why would I even listen to you? It's like going to a grumpy guy just talking about something that he hates. Why would I even do that? So basically, it's more about doing that kind of stuff. So the second thing you want to understand when it comes to making your website, if you try to make it at a like level, professional level, or I mean like just make a website of it on its own, is whether you want to go for something that you have as much control or not. And by that I mean, if you want to actually pick the pieces and try to make something cool and custom made, like remember when MySpace was a thing? Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to that, you want to make as customize it as possible, or you want to do something more about, um, or something like it's already being given to you that it just looks cool, because one thing is that I'm not a designer, I'm a developer, so I like to make things fast. I like to build things from scratch, but they usually look really bad. Like those macaroni pictures that you gave to your mom when you were a kid, that kind of bad. So it's good, it works, it actually does what it has to do, but styling is definitely not my forte. So when it comes to that, I usually go for things that are already been made. For example, when I go to like Drupal, I go to WordPress and I download something called themes that provides me with the coolest features, like columns, making sure it's responsive, that actually loads on mobile, and that kind of stuff. Uh, so you want to, for example, if you want to make something that it's really cool and also works and also sells at the same time, you can always go to things like Squarespace or Shopify and understand how the process works. So if you haven't done that yet, I really suggest you to start going to those places and see how is that like website being made. If it's something that you like, if it's something that would like to have as much control of. And if it's not, then basically, you can install things like Drupal or WordPress that can actually give you the flexibility of installing new things and actually have control, as much control of the data and also the way and feel, the look and feel of things when it comes to doing your website. So that's the second step when it comes to like developing things, if you want to actually develop your website. And the third thing, and that's the most important part, if do you want to make a business out of this website? If that's the case, then step one and step two should be really considered very, very carefully, because step one is more about you just want to put content in there. You just want to like what's the type of content, if you actually need a website to this to make a business. If it's seriousness, if you use scalability, then yes, you do need a website. That's basically part of this, when it comes to developing your business online. There's so many things involved that you cannot afford to have that website in somewhere places. There are other controls, and I'm gonna talk about them, but for now, it's just step one. If you try to make a business out of this, is yes, you do need a website. Second step that actually involves, do you want to make a business? You do want to have as much control as possible, but if you don't have the resources to pay for somebody who knows what they're doing with all these custom things, then you do need somebody to actually have all the control. That's why I recommend always Shopify, or I recommend basically always like Squarespace, things that are already made and made for you because it's a service. But here's the trick: when it's custom made, or maybe, I'm sorry, when it's actually built for you, pre-built for you as a service, that's gonna cost money, and that's something that you really need to see your budget on. I think it's like $25. I remember last time I checked on Shopify, $25 a month, and that thing could add up in the months to come. So think very carefully about what's the budget going to be on your website. And if it's something that, if you're starting a blog and you think maybe, I'm actually trying to make a business out of this blog because I love, sushi so much or whatever. I can make a business like selling, like for example, I start writing about sushi, then I can make a course about how to make sushi, have fun doing sushi, or how to discuss, like become a, traveler and create the best sushi in the world, stuff like that. So things like that, I can make a website out of that and I start selling my course, and that's business right there. That's a niche business. But at the same time, I have to consider, do I want to have control of this and actually have to pay somebody to actually build it for me, or do I have to just have control about it? So, or just hire a service. If this is something like about sushi, I would prefer to start building a blog and then from there, growing my audience. And then once I have an audience and an email list, then from there I start building my website and I can start doing things like, for example, showing my courses and putting things online and putting t-shirts, ilovesushi.com, whatever. So that's something that, you really need to consider when it comes to that. Or but if it's something like an application that I really do need to have customers right away, then that's something that you really want to have a custom made service with your website. So that's sort of the three things you really need to consider when you're doing a website. um, I always like think about, for example, making a website like try to make a cake or just a recipe of things that you really need to mix in order to get this amazing thing going. And the great resources, if you want to find more, for example, like basically like this more recipes of how to make these things, is talk to the community, talk to developers, how developers make the websites, because it's not entrepreneurs who build the websites, by the way. And that's one thing that is always mistaken. People think it's like, oh, that's a great business plan that I really need to make in order to make a website, and from that website something amazing happens. Yeah, no, it's more about, like, for example, you having an idea and then hire a developer that actually builds it for you. So the reason why is that business plans are going to be different every single way, and that's fine. That's great. The only thing is that you want to find a person who has experience building the websites and building business online, and that's the kind of key that I'm here doing with a creative process, in which we actually find the mix of both, the best of both worlds, control with custom-made development work and software, and at the same time the startup mentality of how to begin and doing applications online. So thank you very much for watching this. I know, like, if you have any questions to it, that's something that, you can always go to thecreativeprocess.co, and from there I'll be more than happy to answer all of your questions. Thank you very much and have a good day.